What is good, all you cool cats and kittens? I'm back with Week 5 Power Rankings. I gotta apologize for the late release on the Week 4 recap. I had my first meeting started at 7 a.m. with Asia, and my last meeting ended at 11 p.m. Board meeting with the company in MENA. So it's been a long day to say the least, but I'm making sure not to miss any videos for you guys throughout the year. So just filming these things back to back. We'll get kickstarted with the Week 5 Power Rankings. So we'll get started with the Week 4 standings through the 4 games. We've obviously got every single team out of the undefeated column and out of the winless columns. And we got 2 teams sitting at 3 and 1, and we got 2 teams sitting at 1 and 3, with the rest of our league, a big chunk, sitting at 2 and 2 for the season. Looking at points for, I think it's actually very clear that the 3 teams that I have as a playoff seeding favorites sort of right now are standing in their own tier. And sure, there's only a gap of maybe 20 points between me and Adam, but I actually will see in the power rankings, there's no way I'm contending for a playoff spot. So I think it's the race for the 4th seed is going to be the really interesting thing as we head into the mid-season. So that said, let's go into the power rankings. All right, so at 8, we got a new bottom seller dweller in the league with Trusted Process, ranked at 8. I think with the probably the long-term injury to Gronk being out, and Teddy Bridgewater in concussion protocol, and not really having a clear QB2 right now, is going to continue to sort of keep me down and probably not necessarily competitive on a week-to-week format. But I do have Justin Fields coming back. He's been named the season starter for the rest of the season going forward as of today. So that's good news. We'll see how the rookie performs. But for now, especially after a defeat to this team, I've got me sitting at the bottom seller at 8. We got Full Chubb moving up finally after an amazing near 170-point outing with a lot of his players that were disappointing finally sort of showing up. I've got John sitting at 7, and there's plays, like I mentioned in the recap video earlier today. I do believe John has a chance to be able to make movements to the top, especially with the win here. If he was 0-4, that would be a lot of difference to make, but really he's sitting a game back to the players in contention for that 4th spot for the playoffs today. So I think he's certainly got the roster power to do it, but until we start to see it in the rankings and we start to see it in the performance week to week, it's going to be hard to move him past the 7th for me. At 6, we've got Chota moving down a spot from last week after a bad loss and having this sort of gaping hole at the RB2 position without really a lot of firepower beyond his strength at the receiver core, which is elite in our league even to this day. I think until Michael Thomas comes back and until Chota is able to address his running back deficiencies, I think it's going to be really hard to expect big outings from Chota week to week. But he's certainly got enough assets in the works to be able to make the moves to sort of make it competitive and race for that 4th and final playoff seed for this season. At 5th, we've got Bills Mafia moving up 3 spots to 5. I think after a upset victory to the last week's #1 power ranked manager in Adam with the Washington Fantasy Football Team, I had to move Bills Mafia up 2 spots, and if you look at his roster all throughout, I think the points for is a bad indicator for the strength of his actual team, especially with Clyde Edwards-Helaire actually looking that of a player that was picked with that 5th round draft capital in the inaugural draft. And also, Dak isn't going to have these crazy 8-point sort of disappointing weeks that he's had in week 3. And he obviously showed me in week 4 going for 27 points. So I think I'm really interested in seeing what Brandon looks to do for the season, as he's certainly one of the favorites, I think, for that 4th and final playoff spot. And he's got enough, even after sort of trading Calvin Ridley away, I think he's still got a lot of depth, and he's certainly got a lot of firepower to be able to make moves and really go for the 4th and final playoff spot for this year. So at 4, I've got Ben moving down a spot after being the league leader in week 3, coming down and being the league loser with the lowest amount of points for week 4. It's still really hard to get Ben below this top 4, especially given his record so far. And obviously his loss in week 4 was expected going into the week, no matter how the other players perform, especially because with CMC out, that's your first round. That's the fantasy number 1 that you're just not going to have in your roster. And it looks like CMC will be coming back very soon. So I think Benkin can still move up through the ranks and reclaim his top 3 position as well, and also maybe even retain onto the 4th seeding and the favorite to sort of take that playoff seeding. So we'll see as the injury CMC comes back from the injury and the rest of the season progresses. But really between Ben, Bills Mafia, and Chota, and even Full Chubb as a dark horse, I really do have all 4 of these teams, with the exception of Trust the Process, really as teams that it's way too early to call who's going to be the one that's likely to make that 4th seed. I think we'll see over the next 3 weeks when we're really firmly in mid-season. I think this roster, this list of teams is going to break down to maybe 2 that we can sort of call as their own tier for who's going to get that 4th and final seeding. At number 3, we got a new number 3, Adam with the Washington Fantasy Football Team, dropping down 2 spots to where he was, I believe, in the very first power rankings in week 3. This was a little disappointing for me. I think Adam, had he had Mike Williams perform like he had been in the first 3 weeks, he would have snuck out. He would have had a dominant victory over Bills Mafia, and I think that would have been enough to sort of have no reasons why Adam needs to be dropped down a couple of spots. But it's Mike Williams, and I think Mike Williams is a little bit challenging because he's a player that's had these phenomenal performances in certain games throughout his young career, and he's also had games that are just disappointing. So going forward, it's going to be interesting to see who the real version of Mike Williams is going to be, and that's going to affect Adam's winning column, and it's also going to be having him that will be the force of him moving up through the power rankings again. But again, all these 3 are contender tier for me, which means guaranteed, most likely to get the playoff seeds. And in playoffs, anything can happen. So at number 2, we've got Eves with Cup to Canada moving up 2 spots after a league-leading performance for us in week 4. And I think his team is loaded. He feels good about it. And to be fair, over the first sort of 4 weeks, Eves had his points for has just not really been reflective of how strong and deep his roster is, just because of the unlucky nature of how his QB2 situation has played out with either injuries or just really subpar performances from some of the players where it doesn't even get the replacement level sort of QB2 outputs. Taylor Heinicke obviously scores 27 points in week 4. We're not going to be expecting that out of any streamers going forward, and obviously it's going to be really dependent on where Eves is able to sort of stack up based on how well he streams or how quickly he's able to sort of really permanently address that QB2 position. But regardless, amazing league-leading performance, and that deserves sort of moving up through the ranks. And that means that we've got still Ryan with the Brady's third dynasty sitting at that number 1 position, sitting at 3-1 with still a very solid performance and getting up that win. The only question marks that I really had again was around Antonio Gibson. He's had 2 back-to-back great weeks, so until proven otherwise, I think Ryan's spot right now is firmly cemented at the number 1 spot. Again, I think the top 3 are basically in a tier of their own, and anything can happen come playoffs. But this is what I got for you, and this wraps up the power rankings heading into week 5. Good luck tomorrow on Thursday Night Football. See you Sunday. See you Monday. Peace.